Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be drafting a Madame Igbo blouse, that is a Madame off-shoulder Igbo blouse. So I'm making use of this my scissors tape and ruler. Now I'm going to be minusing 5.5 inches or 6 inches. That is the least you can minus before taking your bust point measurement. So for mine, I took out 5.5 inches, which is 5.5 inches, which is on that first line. Then I came down by the bust point, which is 11.5 inches, and then I came down to 15 inches, which is the under bust point, and then I came down by 19 inches, which is the waist point. And then lastly, the blouse length is 25 inches, but I went ahead to make it 26 inches for the folding, for the hemming part. You know, the line is going to be going, the fabric is going to be going towards the lining part when I'm done um hemming it at that down part. So I've gone ahead to label this my bust line, under bust line, waist, and lastly my full length line. Now the next thing I'm going to do now is to take my nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches, divided by 2 will give me 4. Now it is left for you to determine how wide you want that neck area to be. So just go ahead and divide your bust tip nipple to nipple measurement by 2. Then you add 1 inches. If you don't want this to be too wide, add 1 inches or half inch. But if you want this to be wide, you can go ahead and add 1.5 inches or 1 inch at least. That is the least you can go. Now I've got, after marking my 5.5 inches, I went ahead to mark 2.5 inches for the dart intake, for that bust, that to create that bustier effect, and then I added 1 inch for the stitching allowance. Now for the stitching allowance, go ahead and add half inch, because later on I went ahead to trim out the excess on that part. So now this is my 5.5 inches, my 4 inches nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus 1.5 inches will give me 5.5 inches. Now after doing that, I'm going to still be minusing that 5.5 inches I took out to get my off shoulder, that is that 5.5 inches there. I came down by 9 inches, which is my armhole circumference, divided by 2 will give me is 18 inches, divided by 2 will give me 9 inch. So that is the 9 inches that I marked there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and connect it this way. Remember that my allowance I left at that first line there is where I'm going to connect it this way, meeting that my armhole point. And then I will go ahead to connect it this way also. So now this is serving as my chest line. Now the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark out my nipple to nipple measurement, of course, which is 8 inches, divided by 2 will give me 4 inches. Now that 4 inches, I'm going to go ahead and place it from my bust line. I will mark 4 inches on every line I have on my pattern paper. So I'll just quickly go ahead to do that. Now this is the 4 inches I told you about, that I added 1.5 inches to get that wideness of the neck. Now after I'm done doing that, I will just go ahead to rule a straight line on that point, just like this. After ruling a straight line on that, I will just extend it to the length, to the line at the top. I'll mark out that 4 inches. As you can see, the remaining 1.5 inches is to for the wideness of the neck. Now after I'm done doing this, I'll just connect it together this way. Now after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do now is from the under bust line, from my bust line, I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch. Now the reason why I like coming down by 1 inch is to reduce the pointiness of the cup, of the bustier cup. Now from the under bust line as my center front line, center front part, I'm going to come out by 1 inch, and then I will mark 1.5 inches on the side front part, which is this part here. Now I'm going to go ahead to connect this part here to this part here, this part here to this part here with my curve rule, just like this. Now if you don't have your curve, you can make use of your free hand, but you have to make use of your pencil first to trace it properly before using your marker to outline it. Now I'm going to come up from that my dot line on my full length line. I'm going to come up by 1.5 inches. Now this is very necessary for you to do. You can come up by 2 inches, but 1.5 inches is what I like coming up by at that particular area. Now I will go ahead and connect it this way, and then I'll connect the side front this way. Now after doing that, I'm going to be working on that first line I have here. Remember, I mark out 2.5 inches for the dart intake, so I'm going to be taking 1 inch for the center front, 1.5 inches for the side front. Now this has complete the 2.5 inches I took out for the bustier allowance. Now I'll go ahead to connect it this way as you're seeing me doing. Like I said, you can make use of your free hand, or use your pencil to outline, to mark it there before using your marker to outline it. So after I was done doing this, I will just go ahead and blend my cup area very well. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to take my bust circumference. This is my chest line. I'll take my bust circumference divided by 4. I'm going to be placing one part here, so it's about 10.25 inches. Now I'll go ahead and mark it. I'll go ahead and add that my 2.5 inches that intake. Then I would repeat the same thing on the bust line. I'll take my bust measurement divided by 4 and placing one part of it on my bust line. I will still add that 2.5 inches for that intake. Always remember to add, replace your 2.5 inches for that intake. And then on my under bust line, I will do the same thing. I'll take my under bust measurement divided by 4, I'll place one here, and then I will replace that intake of 2.5 inches. Now this 2.5 inches for that intake, it depends on how busty the person is. If the person is not that busty, you can make use of 2 inches, half inch on the center front, one 1.5 inches on the side front. It depends on how busty that person is. Now I will be repeating the same thing on the waist line. I'm just replacing the dart intake I have there. I'll replace it after taking the measurement for the second waist circumference measurement divided by 4. Now on my full length line, I'm going to be taking my hip measurement, which is after I divided it, I have 12 inches. Now I'll go ahead to connect those points together. So just watch closely what I'm doing. So I forgot to add 1 inch for ease at the full length line. That is your hip circumference plus 1 inch for ease. So when you divide your hip circumference by 4 and you place it there, then you add 1 inch for ease. Now I've gone ahead to do that. I'll just continue to um mark out the points I have on my pattern paper. Now after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to add my allowance. You can make use of 1 inch for allowance, you can make use of 2 inches for allowance, but I always like my dresses or any dress I'm making for a client to always have allowance. Now I'll just go ahead to connect these points this way. not that deep, just like this is fine. So now that is serving as my armhole. Now I'm going to come up from my full length on the first body, like that first line there. I'm going to come up by 1 inch, and then I'll slant it this way towards the center front side, and then I will later extend the curve line to the allowance part. So after doing this, I'll just go ahead to cut it out. So if you're a returning subscriber, I really appreciate you always coming back to watch my videos. And if you're a new subscriber, you're welcome to the family. Go ahead to join this together this way. I'll make sure the lines are aligning properly. And then I'll still minus my 5.5 inches. Take notes, minus the 5.5 inches or 6 inches, or whatever inches you want to take there. I'll minus it. Mine, I took 5.5 inches. I'll minus it to actually take the depth, the neck depth. So the neck depth I'm making use of here is around 7.5 7 inches. So I'll just go ahead and mark that 7 inches, and then I'm going to be using my pencil to actually mark this first to know if I'm getting that shape, that desired shape that I want. So after using my pencil to get the desired shape that I want, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline it. Now, if you want to make use of sweetheart neckline, deep neckline, U neckline, it depends. You just do whatever neckline you want to do. Mine, I'm making use of this beautiful shape line that I have here. So now I'll just go ahead and cut this out this way. So after I'm done doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and cut out the back part. This is all for the front part, guys. So I will label this my center front, my side front. Don't forget to do that. Now to cut out the back parts, I'm going to be minusing 1.5 inches for the zipper allowance. So just watch what I'm doing. I'm minusing 1.5 inches for the zipper allowance to the end of my pattern paper, and I'll go ahead to connect those points just as you see me doing. I'll just go ahead and label this my zipper allowance. Now I'm going to be minusing the 5.5 inches. Remember that we minus at the front part before starting our marking our normal line, under bust line and all that. So I'll just go ahead and rule a straight line on that point, and then from that point I'm going to be taking my remaining measurements, still minusing my 5.5 inches, remember. So I'll come down to my bust line, which is 11.5 inches, to my under bust line, which is 15 inches, but it's not really necessary. So I'll just go ahead to mark my waist line. So because this is the back part, it's not really necessary to add the under bust line. Then lastly, I took my full length line. Now I'll go ahead to rule line on those points I marked out. After doing that, I'm going to be taking all my measurement from that my zipper allowance line this way. I'm going to be taking the wideness of the neck, which is 5.5 inches. Then I'm going to be taking 1 inch for the stitching allowance, which is even much, but later I minused it. Like I later trim out the excess on that stitching allowance. It's supposed to be half inch. To be on the safer side, half inch is okay. Now I'll go ahead to mark out my armhole circumference just as I did for the front part. After doing that, I'll just connect it the same way I did for the front part. This way, and I'll connect it this way. So now the next thing I'm going to be doing is to take my nipple to nipple measurement from that my zipper allowance line, which is 8 inches divided by 2 give me 4 inches. So I'm just marking the 4 inches on my line that I have here. So I'll go ahead to use my ruler to connect the points together, that point together. So this is my chest line, my bust line, my waist line, and then my full length line. Now I'll go ahead from my chest line. I'm coming down by ½ inch. So from that ½ inch I came down by on my chest line, I'm just going to connect it to that line this way, as you can see. Now on my waistline, I'm going to be taking ½ inch on one part of that line, ½ inch on the other parts of the dart line. Now from that full length line, remember I came up by 1.5 inches for while I was drafting the front pattern. So I'm doing the same thing here. 1.5 inches I came up by there, and then I'll go ahead to connect it this way with my ruler. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take the deepness of the neck. So I'm making use of 7.5 inches. So minusing my 5.5 inches before taking the neck depth of the back. I'll go ahead to use my pencil to mark to the shape, the preferred shape that I want, before using my marker to outline it. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to take my bust measurement, my bust circumference. I'll go ahead and my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll place 1 there, and then I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing on my bust line. So the chest line and the bust line is the same measurements I'm going to place there. Then on my waistline, I'm going to take my waist circumference divided by 4. Then I'm going to be placing my that intake of 1 inch. On the hip line, which is the full length line, I'm going to take my hip circumference divided by 4. I will place one part of it there, and I will add 1 inch for ease. Always remember to do that. Now after doing that, I'll go ahead to connect the points together. So I'll go ahead now to add my allowance of 2 inches on every line that I have there. Then I'll go ahead to connect them. So now this is for my allowance, my back allowance. Now I'll go ahead and connect this armhole part this way, just as I did for the front part. Now the next thing I'm going to be working on is I'll be coming up by 1 inch from this my full length line here. Remember, is that first body line that I actually mark that 1 inch upwards on the full length line. Now I'll just extend it to my allowance. The next place I'm going to be working on is my neckline. I will extend it, and then I will come to that my waistline. I will extend that line to my zipper allowance line. Now I'm going to be minusing ½ inch from that line there, and this is to avoid any bulge at that area when I'm fixing my zip. So I'll go ahead and connect it this way. I'm so sorry, it's not really showing that much. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out this part. This part I'm marking this way, I'm going to be cutting it out to avoid any bulge at the zipper area. So after doing that, I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. And now I'll go ahead and cut out that bulginess at the back, zipper area part. Now I'm going to be holding this my dart this way on the material itself. This is how I'm going to cut it out. So now this is for the back part and this is for the front part. So while I'm cutting on my fabric, I'm going to be cutting two of this back part. I'm going to be cutting it times two. Then this front part, I'm going to be cutting it times two. The center front, the side front. Then the center front, I'm going to be cutting it in fold. And this is totally all for this madam blouse, madam off shoulder bustier blouse tutorial. As you can see, I'll see you in my sewing tutorial. Bye.